They're at a point now where their best assets here, their proxies in Hamas and Hezbollah especially, are losing their ability to fight. And Iran, in some measures, and this is something that I get to see firsthand every single day, Iran is losing the ability to have Hezbollah on Israel's doorstep as the number one threat.
Now, Iran's president has warned against further attacks on his country after Israel targeted military sites in yesterday's pre-dawn airstrikes, saying in a statement on X that the country would continue to defend itself. Zach Anders is a journalist covering the Middle East, currently in Israel. Morning to you, Zach.
Hi, good morning.
There are some difficult decisions ahead, aren't there, for Iran? I've been reading from various commentators over the last 24 hours about the challenge of Iran is not going to want to look weak, but it's going to want to respond in some way. And that is potentially a huge decision for the entire region.
And you can look at this with precedent, which is back in April. This was when the first exchange of blows took place. Israel strikes on April 1st. The consulate building of Iran inside Damascus, IRGC men are dead. And then about a week and a half later, Iran responds, broadcasting their attack well in advance. They launched the drones and the cruise missiles first, which took hours to get to Israeli airspace. And in that window, as some of those drones were being shot down by the Americans, by the British, the Iranians then launched the ballistic missiles. So that was a well-advertised attack. It was far different than what we saw October 1st, when they just launched ballistic missiles that take about 11 minutes to get here and provided no warning. But back in April, when Iran carries out that massive attack, we get the same rhetoric. The Israelis saying we could never let an attack like this go unanswered. It can't take place hitting our soil. And there were strikes inside Iran at that time, back in April. They were believed to be carried out by drone. They were far more limited in scope than what we've just seen taking place by the Israelis hitting sites with their fighter jets inside Iranian soil. But at the time, when Iran was firing those drones and ballistic missiles, again, back in April, they broadcasted the same messaging that they're broadcasting now, which is essentially, we consider this closed, don't try and retaliate, don't try and respond. When Israel did respond and did hit targets inside Iranian soil back in April, it was quiet after that. There was no follow-up from Iran. And that's what Israel is banking for here again, that precedent will follow itself, that there won't be some large-scale retribution. And despite the rhetoric that we're seeing from Iranian officials and a new Iranian president here, remember the last time this happened, Iran had a different president who died in a helicopter crash. The hope here on the Israeli side is that while the rhetoric is so high on the Iranian end, that it's still provided enough cover for Iran to say we've achieved a strategic and a public victory in the eyes of Iranians who have these spectacular images of ballistic missiles striking near Tel Aviv and military bases. They know they hit Israel. Here on this end, the stuff that was hit overnight in some remote areas, and we're having to use satellites to be able to see the damage after the fact at these military bases. So Iran can very easily cover this to the public and say, we hit Israel hard. You all saw the images on Al Jazeera. We did not get hit, and we were able to defend ourselves. And the Israelis hoping that that's what Iran will do here, just say matter closed.
And of course, one of the options open to Iran is to revert to type and use proxies, as it has done so often in the region. And I guess the question is, at what point does this get escalated further? Clearly, a direct attack from Iran on Israel would, but if it reverted to using proxies, as it has done in the past, whether that's the Houthis, whether it's Hezbollah, whether that is Hamas, I mean, that can't even be seen as a de-escalation, can it?
No, but it is kind of like we're operating in the dark here, right? For a couple of reasons. The ability for us to say that there's been precedent here in these attacks is starting to meet the water's edge. But also, Iran's behavior is also entering into this new stage where it might not necessarily be, the right word to describe it wouldn't necessarily be erratic. It still seems calculated. But they're at a point now where their best assets here, their proxies in Hamas and Hezbollah especially, are losing their ability to fight. And Iran, in some measures, and this is something that I get to see firsthand every single day, Iran is losing the ability to have Hezbollah on Israel's doorstep as the number one threat. The military action that Israel is taking out under Hezbollah, I'm sure time will certainly aid in some of these things that I'm about to say, but what we've witnessed, Hezbollah's capabilities within the last month, how they've been degraded, is incredible. It's remarkable, and will probably be, when it's all said and done, one of the more impressive campaigns in modern warfare on the Israeli side. To take the entire leadership structure, not just the man that we know as the leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, being killed, but down the line, the leadership chain of commands who've been or who are still in hospitals with wounds from the pagers and the radios that exploded. This is, by all accounts, an organization that is having a very difficult time acting as a resistance front right now. Some of the reports that we're getting from the front lines in southern Lebanon suggests that Hezbollah is having a very difficult time communicating, organizing itself, and performing some of these defensive holds of some of these villages in southern Lebanon, where the civilians have largely evacuated. The IDF actually just 4 nights ago took me into southern Lebanon at night to tour one of the tunnels that they have just yesterday blown up. And the amount of defensive posturing that Hezbollah had placed in southern Lebanon right there on the border that they've already lost represents decades of investment and building some of these tunnels that they lost in the matter of days. So is Iran looking at what's happening to Hezbollah and going, we're losing a window of opportunity here to be able to have this main aggressor to the Israeli state right there on their doorstep? Perhaps that changes how Iran calculates going forward, because by all accounts, Hezbollah is losing this fight in a much more succinct, severe fashion than Hamas was in the early salvos. I mean, Hamas had, of course, prepared and launched a surprise attack. The Israelis had an entire year to plan how they were going to dismantle Hezbollah.
And we should also look at some suggestions by some commentators that Israel's decision to respond to Iran was a tactic designed to, well, divert international attention away from its operation in northern Gaza, which was described by the UN Human Rights Chief Volker Turk as the darkest moment of Gaza's war, saying that the Israeli military is subjecting an entire population to bombing, siege, and the risk of starvation.
And there's nothing more concerning right now, I think, than what is happening in northern Gaza. The news that we're getting out of there has been piecemeal, and that's reflective of the fact that some of the Palestinian journalists who are reporting in this area have been shot and killed. And the sieges that have been taking place, the IDF describing them as raids, short missions. They go in, they return. But some of the sieges of camps, and in particular a hospital in northern Gaza over the last 2 weeks, has produced horrible results. And I don't think that anyone that's seen the images of the young Palestinian man burning alive inside of a tent with an IV still in his arm outside of one of these hospitals, anyone who's seen that image is never going to be able to forget it. And that's what's been, as I speak to some of my contacts in Gaza, that's all that the people inside the Gaza Strip are talking about and know about, is what is taking place, the siege that is taking place in northern Gaza. The IDF says within the past 24 hours that there has been intense Hamas engagement, that they've killed more than 40 Hamas men just in the last 24 hours in this area of the northern Gaza Strip. But do not be mistaken. While this fight is taking place, the number of civilians that are still in the area, I think we need to also have a conversation about the fact that the goalposts have moved quite a bit in how we have held to account and held a standard, I guess, that the IDF is warning people and the civilian population ahead of time of planned military action, giving evacuation notices. We've noticed here in northern Gaza over the last 2 weeks, there have been evacuation notices, but they have been far misrepresenting where the actual fight is and where the actual fight is going. Israel pushing against Hamas, feeling like, and what has been described to me as that they have Hamas on the run, that now is this push that they're trying to break the back of whatever is left of Hamas, especially after the killing of Yahya Sinwar, and try and end that war in the Gaza Strip. And I think that's why we're seeing a very bloody chapter right now, as the IDF thinks that there's a window to put an end to Hamas, and they're pressing forward with little regard to what the collateral damage is.
Zach, thank you so much. That's Zach Anders. He's a journalist covering the Middle East, currently in Israel.